A waitress leaves work early one night in Houston, Texas. The next morning, her vehicle is found abandoned by the nearest highway. During an era with an excessive amount of missing and murdered young women in the Houston, Texas area, are the cases connected? Or is it a one-off, a crime committed by someone she knows? My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Del Rio, Texas, is in the southwestern region of the state on the border of Mexico, close to the confluence of the infamous Rio Grande and San Felipe Creek. To the north, about 150 miles away, is San Antonio. In this part of the Lone Star State, there is some serious Western history, along with a dark history of serial killers. I've spent time all over Texas. In fact, the next installment, Season 5 of my other podcast, Paper Ghosts, is set in Weatherford, over near Fort Worth. This is a beautiful state, and some of the kindest, caring people I have ever met live in Texas. Austin is an incredible place. The barbecue is good. The beefsteak, bar none. That dry heat and the sun beating off the tar with seemingly no place to hide from it, I'll admit, is rough. It's a large state as well, so getting from city to city, and even within each city, can prove very difficult. As far as true crime goes, Texas could be considered one of only a handful of states where some of the most high-profile cases in history are based. My guess is it's really because the state is so big, with only 2 major roadways going in and out, offering places to hide and rural roads to abduct victims, with a highway system conducive to transiency, much like good old Florida. Tara Suzette Breckenridge was born in Del Rio in 1968. An attractive young woman at 23 with feathery brown hair flowing over her small shoulders, brown eyes to match. At 5 feet 4 inches tall, about 115 pounds, Tara could be considered petite. She has this engaging smile, and in several of the photographs I came across, she has this young executive vibe to her, with a quite natural magnetic charm kind of drawing you in. Tara's childhood in Del Rio has been described in news reports as being relatively normal and unremarkable, whatever that is supposed to mean. I am one who believes every child's life is remarkable. The Breckenridge family, Tara's parents, Betty and Darrell, along with her 4 siblings, lived under a firm, unshakable religious foundation, which is something I greatly respect and admire. Tara grew up with a passion for art. After graduating from high school with the class of 1981, she begins pursuing a career as a photographer. With that chosen vocation, of course, she understands there is not much in the way of opportunity in Del Rio, which boasts a large population, don't get me wrong, but Tara saw better possibilities for herself in Houston, a 5-hour and 15-minute drive, nearly a straight shot on the 10 due east. In Houston, Tara finds it difficult to break into the photography game and eke out a living during those early days of being there. So she supplements her income by waitressing at a place called the Men's Club in downtown Houston. Houston is an enormous city, kind of split up into 4 quadrants. one of the only cities I can think of that can take you an hour in traffic to get from one end to the other. The men's club is exactly the type of place you might expect with such a crass name, a strip club, though the business brands itself as being a higher-end, quote, luxury, exotic dance establishment, whatever the hell that means. In all honesty, you can put candles and frosting on a cake made of shit, but inside, it is still shit. And more importantly, in this case, perhaps, that shit cake still attracts flies and maggots. So calling yourself an exotic luxury strip joint is arrogant and shallow. Own who you are. So, although Tara only served drinks, and I want to be clear about that fact, and did not perform, she still goes into work and is routinely and repeatedly sexually harassed by some of the men who frequent these types of places. A waitress working in a strip joint like the men's club, if she wants to make money, works the night shift and generally stays until closing. That's when all the patrons come in, after work. And with all of the available information in this case, it seems on August 4th, 1992, over 30 years ago now, Tara clocked out at 1 a.m., a bit early on this night because, the Houston Police Department reports, it had been a slow night. Which is, come to find out, not really 100% accurate. Tara leaving work early was a surprise to her boss, who later tells the television show Unsolved Mysteries that Tara always stayed until closing, no matter how busy the place was. But for some reason, when he asked for volunteers to leave early because it was slower than usual, she stepped right up. Tara was always there until 2 a.m., the manager went on to say, and on this night was in such a hurry to leave, she even walked by one of the bouncers without saying goodnight, which again was out of character. In the years since she'd been in Houston, Tara had met someone. I'll call him Brad. Though his name is out there, I don't think naming the guy here serves any purpose but maybe to fuel the social media, basement-dwelling, sleuthing types who like to point fingers, make shit up, and speculate about innocent people who have not been charged with crimes. So I am not going to contribute to that. Tara drove a 1986 Pontiac Fiero. On that night, one of the bouncers reportedly walked Tara to her vehicle and made sure she got on her way home safely, which, according to all the reporting I could find, she did. It's that time frame between 1 a.m. and about 4 hours later, 5 a.m., which becomes utterly vital in this case. Her live-in boyfriend, Brad, along with a friend of his, who had been together that night, made it to the apartment Tara and Brad shared. They got there at 5 a.m. Walking in, what is obvious to them, so they have claimed, is that Tara is not at home. On any other normal working night, Tara would drive home and, because it was so late, or so early in the morning, depending on how you look at it, she'd either plop down on a recliner in the living room or go right off to bed. Brad and his friend later explained that after not finding Tara inside the apartment, they grow concerned, take off, and begin driving around town looking for her. This, for me, has never been fully explained, meaning, why assume you needed to look for her? Generally speaking, in these situations, I think all of us would say to ourselves, maybe she's hanging out with friends at work or went out to breakfast, instead of assuming right away you needed to go in search of her. First stop they make is the men's club. See if maybe she is still at the club hanging out or, for whatever reason, had not left for home yet, which makes sense to me. Perhaps the boys wanted to continue partying, and they thought they'd meet up with her for an after party inside the club. But again, this has not been fully explained publicly. A call to the club, I think, might have worked as well. Driving from the men's club to the I-610 loop on 11th Street in Houston nearby can take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the time of day. Maybe less, maybe more. As I said, traffic in Houston is a funky thing. Very unpredictable, extremely congested, and heavy. But one might guess that at the time Tara left work, it's a safe bet there was very little, if any, traffic. So it would not take her long to make it to the loop, hop onto the 610, and head home. Brad and his friend leave the men's club and drive toward the 610 loop. As they approach the loop near 11th Street, they see something. A red sports car. Tara's Fiero. According to them, they pull over thinking perhaps Tara had car trouble and is just stuck. But when they search Tara's vehicle, she is nowhere to be found. By now, the sun is up. Cars are beginning to fill up the roadways during what is the morning rush hour. At 7:30 a.m. that morning, the boys call law enforcement to report what they had found. That's 2.5 hours after they arrived home to the apartment. I don't say this to raise concern, but only as a fact. Now, according to Tara's mother, during a television interview, Tara and Brad were on the outs. That Tara was thinking of moving out of their apartment leading up to that August 4th day she disappears. There were times, her mother says, that she was thinking of leaving the apartment with all of her belongings without even telling Brad. Betty called Tara and Brad's relationship rocky. Just the previous month, that July, Betty explains during the same interview, Tara had visited home and talked about how stressed she was because of the relationship. One other interesting bit of information in this case is what one of the original investigators said back in the day, that Brad and his buddy were at a pool hall most of that night, Fat Freddy's, which I think is just the perfect name for a Texas pool hall. At about midnight, Brad is seen leaving the pool hall alone and then returning at 1:45 a.m. Okay, so that's what one of the original investigators has said. So you can see how Brad becomes someone Houston PD and those looking to brand Brad a suspect is interested in as perhaps knowing more than he has been saying. Add that to Betty Breckenridge painting a picture of a relationship between her daughter and Brad having run its course, with Tara experiencing anxiety about leaving him, Brad not having an alibi for an hour and 45 minutes, and you're left with the feeling that Brad could have met up with Tara after she got out of work. Hindsight is not always 20/20 in missing person and murder investigations. Hindsight can be, and often is, tainted by misrepresented facts. So things can sometimes appear to be what they are not. I am not questioning the memories of a mother or even an investigator. I am only pointing out that things aren't always what they seem, which is why the best investigators rely on impartial evidence, along with multiple points of view to guide them. This is why I am always weary about relying on one report or what others not connected to cases have said, because investigators from the Houston PD looking into the case decades after Tara goes missing say that Brad was at work until 3:30 a.m. Something easily provable, you might expect. So this new time frame narrows the window down considerably for when Brad could have met up with Tara. These are the types of cases that can catch fire within those online social media groups I mentioned. And whenever that happens, you can bet your ass that nothing good will come of it, nothing positive, and certainly nothing that can help the investigation or give victims' families any solid answer. And it's all because people within these groups who have no experience investigating crime or even a base knowledge of police work begin to speculate. And when they do that, they often add information to the known facts to support an agenda. This is where that type of nonsense can hurt an investigation and have grave effects. Cold case investigators then have to sift through garbage theories and made-up stories to make sure there isn't any important context or truth. So that troll on their phone or computer amping people up online, spreading rumor as fact, adding lies to the record is contributing to the pain of the families in a huge way. Then you have the disingenuous podcasters, those with a mic and a laptop in their basements, and even some podcasters whose names you'd recognize, adding their spin and ridiculous theories and contrived expertise. And a case can get away from law enforcement, once again, re-traumatizing victims' families. What interests me are facts, and I will sometimes get things wrong myself on this show. Unintentionally, of course. Maybe a town name, or a pronunciation, or an age. I try to correct the record best I can when I realize the error, and then I move on. One fact in this case, which came directly from the Houston PD, nags at the back of my throat like an itch. Investigators discover letters from a man who talks about how much in love with Tara he was. This man also brings gifts to the men's club and gives them to Tara. Now that is something I could see leading down into a space where obsession, stalking, and that old cliche, if I can't have you, no one else can, often resides, which almost never has a happy ending. Let's take a break here. Come right back. I'd just like to say something, and I don't want to belabor this issue, but I need to keep saying it. If we don't call out these social media and online sleuthing groups, and even podcasters spreading nonsense and emphatic lies about a case for the sole purpose of likes and clicks and listeners and money, it will continue to grow. And look, it might be too late already. Still, I cannot stress enough how disastrous this type of meddling in a case is. I speak to law enforcement routinely, and I always ask about it. It is the bane of cold case and even current case investigations for them. It can have a detrimental effect on the lives of people involved in a case, beyond the victims' families. Investigators are up against the clock at times within these cases. They are searching not only for a victim, but a suspect. And some of these groups aid and abet those suspects, if only unknowingly. So we have to be vigilant. We cannot promote these groups and certainly never engage with them. I hope you don't mind me going on here a little bit about this. It is at the heart of cases today and is, as I have said before on this show, now making its way into courtrooms and jury deliberations. And that is one of the more disturbing aspects of it all. That because of an online campaign, a jury might become tainted and a murderer allowed to walk free. I mentioned before the break that a man frequenting the strip club where Tara worked had given her letters professing his undying love for her, and he had also given her gifts. One important aspect of that thread in the investigation is that he brought those gifts to the club, which opened him up to being seen. So people working at the club knew this guy and how much affection he had for Tara. Now, we could argue that someone obsessed might become overwhelmed by their urges and cave into a split decision to abduct. So we are left with a dilemma. Without having any additional evidence besides circumstances, it's speculation that this dude is acting under dark and nefarious motives. There is nothing else leading us down a road where this guy crosses the line into abduction and murder. Still keep an eye on him, of course, and put his picture at the top of the crime board, but keep digging. One of the most difficult jobs investigating missing person cases is the lack of forensic or trace evidence and not having a crime scene. It is the most frustrating piece of the puzzle. You are searching for a ghost, in other words, without even having an idea where that ghost was last seen. We're just assuming Tara was abducted where her car was found, but she could have been taken in the parking lot of the strip club. She could have been grabbed as soon as she drove out of the parking lot. That person could have drove her car to where they found it. Let's add something else into this, and this has to be considered, thus opening up a much broader investigation. The 1990s in Texas, in and around southeast Houston specifically, was a hotbed of serial killer activity, abductions and murders, with many high-profile serial murderers running around. I worked on the Texas Killing Fields case back in 2011 for my show Dark Minds. Murder victims there ranged between 12 and 25 years old, many of which shared the same physical features, with the number of victims in that case, by some counts, at 30. The operating theory most popular today is that two serial killers working separately at the same time between the 1970s and 1990s are responsible. Tara fits the Killing Fields victim profile and location. So you'd have to consider her case as potentially connected until you can rule that theory out completely. One case not part of the Texas Killing Fields. Noelle Blaskowski, who was 24 years old at the time she was found murdered in 1996. In that case, a call was made to the police by the manager of the Oakview Motel in San Antonio, which is outside Houston, obviously, but not far enough to exclude it as part of the ongoing serial killer frenzy at the time in Texas. The manager says he went to Noelle's room to collect rent money. She was living there. The door was wide open, so he walks in and finds her on the floor. She was wearing only a cut-off t-shirt and her hands were bound behind her back. Her vehicle was found in the parking lot. She had last been seen the previous day. The TV set inside her room was on and the volume turned up all the way. The San Antonio Police Department released a statement saying Noelle was an exotic dancer at the Wild Zebra Club in San Antonio. The medical examiner determined she had been strangled to death. And this is what struck me. Looking at photos of Noelle, she bears a striking resemblance to Tara, which to me, if we're talking any other state, would be unimportant. But this being Texas, with all of that activity going on, I think it should be at least added to our crime board. Yet another case, just a few years later, might also fit into the same mold. Lisa Lynn Woods is found in a vacant lot near a fire station, which had been abandoned, on North San Marcos in downtown San Antonio near the 5 Points section. Lisa had a cloth of some type tied over her face, and her head appeared to be bashed in. Her shoes had been removed and placed methodically on her chest, a strange yet telling fact. She was found wearing only a pair of gray sweatpants. Turns out, Lisa had been shot in the head in a separate location and dumped in that field. A bit older than Tara and Noelle at 38 years old, Lisa had a similar look, long brunette hair with a slight reddish tint, blue eyes, clear skin, sharp facial features. These three women together could easily be sisters. A beautiful woman, Lisa grew up in Santa Monica, California, and loved softball, campfire girls, and the clarinet. Her family says she was fun-loving and had an incredible sense of humor. She and her mother had moved to San Antonio in 1977, and Lisa married in 1987, but then divorced in 1992. She had spent, according to her obituary, 4 months in a place called the Alpha Home, a substance abuse center. And this was from late 1998 into the early part of 1999. I want to stress there are no connections among the three cases besides the victim profiles and proximity. But when you have nothing else to go on, you have to begin looking for patterns and consistencies elsewhere, outside the box, if you will. And these three women shared very similar looks, as I have said, despite one being missing and the other two murdered in different ways. With all of the serial killer activity going on in southern Texas during this time, one would have to consider them victims of a serial murderer. One particular serial killer, Anthony Allen Shore, who killed females between the years 1986 and 1995, with a very active period in 1992, preyed on victims in and around Harris County, which Houston is within. Shore's victims were mostly younger, from 9 to 21. Shore is also known by the silly Hollywood nickname, the Tourniquet Killer, because he used a ligature to strangle his victims. He was sentenced to death in 2004. His motive? Rape. Total piece of shit who deserves to be executed. Let's take our final break here, come back, and get into some of the details about Tara's case, which I think you'll find quite interesting. One of the television shows I remember vividly from the 1980s is Unsolved Mysteries. In those early days of the show, streets of San Francisco fedora-wearing detective Carl Malden, Perry Mason and Ironside actor Raymond Burr, and, of course, Robert Stack with that deadpan, unmistakable voice, presented stories ranging from the paranormal to cold case murders and missing people. If any of you recall, the show had kind of a hackneyed, badly acted way of doing reenactments, and yet no more over the top for its day than those we see right now on television. The one thing the show did well, and this was the work of the producers, I can tell you from experience, was present the facts of the case in a straightforward manner while presenting to the audience those facts that might help them participate in solving the mystery by calling into the hotline or reporting a piece of evidence or some information about a suspect. Tara's case was featured in an episode that aired on February 10th, 1995. What struck me in the episode was something the manager of the men's club strip joint said during his interview. Quote, "It would be a little unusual for Tara to ask to go home. She wasn't always interested in leaving. She was usually there until 2 o'clock in the morning to make as much money as she could. She even walked past the doorman without saying goodbye or without responding to his goodbye." So the picture he paints is what? She leaves at 1 o'clock in the morning and she rushes out of there. Doesn't even say her goodbyes to people she generally does. Moreover, Tara always carried a can of mace, which tells us she was mindful of protecting herself, vigilant even. That can of mace was found inside her car. So whatever happened didn't present itself to her as perhaps being dangerous, at least not right away. Or the person who abducted her placed it there. It appears from those two bits of information covered in the episode that she might have known her abductor. She was in a hurry, it seemed, to leave the club for a reason, and not carrying her mace or using it might suggest she knew the person who came upon her at the place near the freeway where her vehicle was found, if that is where the abduction took place. Then we get to the notes the dude was giving Tara inside the club. He was obviously infatuated with her at the least, obsessed, maybe at the worst. Tara, according to law enforcement, rejected his advances, yet he persisted. Houston PD interviewed him and later said he was nothing more than a man with an attraction toward her and not a suspect. One of the notes he wrote Tara read, "Please don't be scared. Do what your heart tells you. I'm very excited that you'll marry me." And he spelled the word marry wrong. He spells it Marrie. Tara's live-in boyfriend also sat for an interview with Unsolved Mysteries. At one point he says, "I haven't been charged with a crime. I love the woman to death. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I love her with all my heart, and I hope the whole world hears that. I did not commit a crime, so I cannot be charged with one. It's as simple as that." If this crime would have happened today, that boyfriend would have been slayed online, branded a murderer on social media, and his life destroyed. No doubt about it. In fact, recent comments on one platform I read discussing the case point directly at him. This next fact is where my money is in this case and where I believe the answer lies. It's a fact I dug up about Tara's vehicle. The alternator belt in her car engine was missing. What strikes me about this is that you can still start and drive a car for a short distance without an alternator belt, which is designed to help recharge the battery in the car as you drive. But driving without it drains the battery, so when the battery dies, the car shuts down. So let's say for argument that somebody at the gentleman's club admired her, had an obsession with her, or just decided that night to prey upon her. Knowing which vehicle she drove, he could go out into the parking lot, remove the alternator belt, duck down the street, and wait for her to drive away, knowing she would break down at some point during her drive home. I've seen this type of rigging the car in serial killer cases. Once Tara pulls over after her car shuts down, it might go something like, "Hey, can I help you?" Right? He pulls up behind her. "Hey, what's the problem? I recognize you from the men's club." Maybe the guy is someone she trusts, or at least knows well enough to accept his help. This situation, for me, fits in with the little bit of evidence we have left behind. Then again, the alternator belt could have snapped off while she was driving. I don't see anywhere that anyone checked the road along the route to see if they could come up with a belt which had fallen off a vehicle. So who knows? As of now, Tara's case and the others I mentioned in this episode are still open. If you have any information about any of these cases, please call the Houston Police Department 713-247-8111. That's 713-247-8111. I have a lot of listeners in Texas. One of you might know something that could change the lives of a victim's family. Thanks for listening. That's it for this week. Be safe. Be aware. Sources for this episode include Why Houston Remains Gripped by the Unsolved Case of Tara Breckenridge by Tim Malcolm, Houston Chronicle, June 18th, 2025. Episode number 14.107, Unsolved Mysteries television series. Various FBI and Houston police reports and press releases. The Charlie Project, Tara Suzette Breckenridge. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinas, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.